Hi, I'm Jilly G. Welcome to my kitchen. Today is my next recipe in the 4th of July collaboration that Our Heritage Works and I are doing together. I hope you're enjoying this little series so far. My recipe for today will be gluten-free ice cream sandwiches. These are perfect for a summer party, or they're actually perfect for any time of year, really. And I'll be showing you two different kinds today. I'll be showing you kind of a traditional classic chocolate version, and then I'll be showing you one of my favorite cookies is a toffee bit cookie. I know it looks like I've got a lot going on, but it's actually really fast and easy. Cookies are always pretty simple to make. I've already made homemade ice cream. I'll put a link in the description box for that recipe below, or for that video below. But you could use store-bought ice cream. You don't have to use homemade. So what we're gonna do first is actually preheat the oven to 350. And the nice thing about these two recipes is they both use the same oven temperature. So we'll make the toffee bit cookie dough first, and then it does need to chill a little bit in the fridge. Once we get that made and put in the fridge chilling, we can make and cook our chocolate version. And I've had everything sitting out so it's at room temperature. So in this bowl, I have 3½ cups of my gluten-free flour mix. And then for the rest of the dry ingredients, I have 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, and ½ teaspoon of salt in there. And just mix this together. This toffee bit cookie recipe was one of the very first recipes I converted to be gluten-free when I first went gluten-free. And then as time has gone on, I don't use brown sugar or white sugar anymore. So then I had to convert it to honey or something else. I've used coconut sugar in this particular recipe and it really does work great. But today I'm using 3/4 of a cup of honey and 1 tablespoon of molasses. And I actually want to see how soft my butter is. And it is room temperature, but not soft enough to mix in, so I'm going to throw it in the microwave for just a second. Oh, perfect. So now that my butter is easily mixed around, I'm going to stir in my 3/4 of a cup of honey and 1 tablespoon of molasses. And the reason I'm using molasses is to give that caramely flavor that brown sugar does. And while I'm getting all of this honey out of here, I would like to say thank you to everyone that has recently come over to my channel. I'm so happy to have you along. And also a big thank you to everyone that has been here the whole time. And you keep watching and you keep making my recipes. And as always, thank you so much for everybody that comments. I love hearing your comments. I love hearing your stories. And the biggest thank you of all, as always, goes out to my patrons. I cannot say thank you enough for being a patron and supporting my channel. And if you're interested in becoming a patron, the link for that is below in the description box. Also, my Instagram is there, which at this point, I don't know why you'd want to follow me on Instagram. I've been so terrible at posting anything on Instagram lately. But that is there too. So just mix together your softened butter and your honey and molasses. And while I'm saying thank yous, I would also like to give a big thank you to Our Heritage Works for yet another collaboration and sharing recipes. It's been so much fun. And I've got 4 eggs here, and we'll just mix these in one at a time. And I don't know about you guys, ice cream sandwiches always remind me of being a little kid. Whether it was at the grocery store where you buy a box of 6 or however many they come in, or you get them when the ice cream man is coming around in the little ice cream truck, they always remind me of being a kid. And one of the other things I really like about ice cream sandwiches is you don't have to make the classic version, which I will be showing you. But I like to make it with any kind of cookie. It goes really great with just a regular chocolate chip cookie, snickerdoodles, ginger snaps. And that being said, you can use any flavor of ice cream that you like. I'm just using plain vanilla bean ice cream today. Egg number 3. And while that's sitting there, I'll just go ahead and crack and get my 4th egg ready. And at this point, if your mixture is starting to look a little bit chunky and separated, don't worry. It all comes together when we add in the dry ingredients. And there's our 4th egg going in. And before I mix that in, I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla bean paste. You could use just regular vanilla extract. I just decided to go with vanilla bean paste today. And then just give this a really good mix. Now before we add in the dry ingredients, I need to get my toffee bits. And this is 1 batch of my honey toffee. I also have a recipe here on the channel of this. So on this cookie sheet, I just kind of twist the pan a little bit like an ice cube tray. That gives us a head start on breaking this into pieces. And you could break it apart like this, however big of pieces you want. If you have a little meat tenderizer, that really helps. Get these into small pieces. And this is about the size that I'm looking for. Oh, my oven is ready. So I'm looking for pieces that are a little bit smaller than chocolate chips. And I know that you can buy toffee bits in your baking section of the grocery store. But I like to make my own because I can make my own toffee with honey instead of sugar. And of course, this is a lot more toffee than what we'll use today for this recipe. But you can crush up all of your toffee and put it in a freezer bag or, plastic container or something like that, and stick it in the freezer and make these cookies anytime you want to. Or just eat it on ice cream, whatever, wherever you like to put toffee. So this is 1 heaping cup of toffee bits. And we only used about 1/4 of all of this toffee. This toffee, because it's made with honey, it is stickier than kind of a traditional toffee, but just as delicious. So bring back our cookie dough, which isn't dough yet, and give this a really good mix. And then I'm going to start adding in my dry ingredients a little bit at a time. Probably in about thirds. And I'm going to switch to my spatula. Add in a little more flour, and that was almost all of it. And that is just fine. And then just give this a really good stir. Scraping the bowl as you go. And now the rest of our flour. And now for our very full heaping cup of toffee bits. And just make sure these are all mixed in. We want them evenly distributed in our cookie dough. These cookies tend to spread when they're being baked, and you don't want them to all run together. So chilling them in the fridge works really well. This will go in the fridge while we get our chocolate part ready. And the reason I say chocolate part, because it's not really a cookie. What we're actually going to do is make a cake. Kind of. A very thin cookie-like cake. So I've just got a cookie sheet here. This is a 10 by 15 cookie sheet lined with parchment paper. And then we'll just mix the rest of our ingredients together. Not very many at all. So I've got 1 stick of butter here, 1/2 cup, that needs to be melted. And that is almost melted. I was tempted to use my same whisk, but because I need to whisk the dry ingredients first, I don't want to get my whisk all gunked up yet. So the 1/2 cup of flour, 1/4 cup of cocoa powder. You could sift it if you want to, but I'm going to whisk it and get any lumps out if there's any lumps in here. Let me get my 1/4 teaspoon of salt in here. And I love recipes that are like this where it's just, you dump it all in. It doesn't even matter the order. And then you just mix it all together. So here's our 1/4 cup of honey. And as always, I will put the equivalents to sugar in the description box with the recipe. And in with my almost melted butter. It's still kind of chunky. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And just whisk this all together. Even though that butter looked chunky, it really melted nicely. One egg, and mix this till it's really combined. And it looks like brownie batter. We'll give the bowl a good scrape here. Bring over our cookie sheet. And because my parchment paper doesn't exactly fit, I have 1 piece in the middle and then 2 on either side, kind of squished in there. And then I have an offset spatula that will help spread out this cake batter because it is such a small amount. I mean, look at that. It's really just a teeny amount. And I find it's easier to just dump it in the middle. Make sure to get all of it. There's not very much to begin with. And then with your spatula, I kind of hold down the parchment paper and just start spreading it out. You want to get this as even as possible. And it doesn't look like it will be enough, but it really will be. Remember, we want this to be a really thin layer of cake. And once you've got that in a nice even layer, let's do this. Make sure to use all of it. The true test will be once it's baked and we take it out of the parchment. Then we'll really be able to see how well of a job we did spreading this out. Okay, so this will go into the oven for about 8 minutes. So our cake is all finished and it is nice and set. And you can also tell when it's finished that it is just pulling away from the edges of the parchment paper and the sides of the pan. So now we just let this cool off. Here is our chilled cookie dough, and it still is pretty soft, but it should be chilled enough that it won't spread a lot. And of course, if you notice that it is spreading way too much, just stick it back in the fridge. 2 more cookie sheets lined with parchment. And I've used this cookie scoop a lot. I think it's a tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon and a half. You think I'd remember by now. Of course, you could go smaller if you want to, but I find that this size really works out perfect. I don't put them too close together because they do spread. Get our next cookie sheet ready. And you don't have to use parchment paper. You could put them on a lightly greased cookie sheet, but I've always noticed that with the toffee bits, sometimes they do kind of stick to the cookie sheet a little bit. So I prefer the parchment paper. So now we'll go in the oven about 8 to 10 minutes. So these went for about 10 minutes, and I usually like to let them set on the cookie sheet for just a minute or 2 after they come out of the oven. They're really soft, and you can see where some of the toffee is melting a little bit. And if we were to try to take them off of the parchment right this minute, it would be kind of a mess. And while these were in the oven, I do have the dough in the fridge. But let's see, I think we can start taking these off of the cookie sheets now. And sometimes that toffee builds up on the spatula. Woo. Be careful. And this is also why these make a perfect ice cream sandwich cookie. It's a really delicious cookie, first of all, but second of all, they stay soft. And so you have a really nice soft ice cream sandwich. Even though they are frozen with the ice cream, they're not a super hard cookie to bite into. All of my cookies are baked. In fact, some of these are still cooling off. So our cake is ready to go. It is room temperature, completely cooled off. And then we can just take it out of the pan. Nothing to it at all. And then all I'm going to do is just make sure that it is not stuck at all. So all we're going to do is cut it in half. And you could measure exactly, but I'm just going to eyeball. And what we're going to do is put ice cream on this side and then flip this over to be the top. And then we'll wrap it in plastic wrap and let it sit in the freezer so it can really firm up. And then I'll do the same thing with some cookies. I'll put a scoop of ice cream between each cookie. Some of these got a little bit darker on the bottom than others, but that's what happens when you are in the kitchen. So let me get my ice cream. And my ice cream, it looks the color of French vanilla ice cream. It's a little more yellow. The reason for that is, first of all, the honey that I use, it does make it a little bit darker. And then the other reason is I get eggs from my mom's chickens. And for some reason, her chicken eggs have a darker yellow yolk than the store-bought eggs. And my ice cream, even though I just pulled it out of the freezer, it is really soft. Probably not super soft enough to put between our cake layer. But what I'm going to do is scoop quite a bit out so I can soften it up enough to make it spreadable. And this is where you can put as much or as little ice cream as you like. And I think that looks good, that I'm going to let sit for just a minute. But because we're not worried about spreading the ice cream on our cookies, I am just going to get, a smallish scoop and get a cookie and then just mash it on here. Maybe. Find a cookie that is equal size, and then I will wrap it in this plastic wrap and then throw it in the freezer. And once I get it in the plastic wrap, I can flatten it out a little bit easier. Get a nice little scoop here, and then pick out a cookie that you would like. And these cookies are very soft. So if you manhandle it too much, it will fall apart. And you could eat these right now if you wanted to. I really like it once they've firmed up in the freezer with the ice cream and the cookies together. And then the ice cream kind of blends with the cookie a little bit. So I'm going to get these in the freezer. Homemade ice cream never firms up as much as store-bought does. And I don't want it super, super melted so that it will run all over. But I do want it softer so I can spread it out. And then I'm just going to put a little bit here and a little bit there just to make it easier to spread it out. And you want to work fairly quickly. Got another offset spatula here. And you can see my ice cream is very soft and melty. But do your best to get it in an even layer, almost all the way to the edges. When we put the top on, it will squish to the edges. And now very carefully, pick up your other piece of cake, and mine's already cracking, and so I'm actually just going to let it fall apart and piece it on. Okay, and now I am dripping everywhere. And what I'm gonna do is just wrap it all up in the parchment paper for less of a mess. Get yourself another piece of plastic wrap, and we'll go right on the plastic wrap. And ice cream goes from not melted to really melted really fast. So the pan that I cooked it on, I'm gonna very carefully put it on there. With the soft ice cream, it is sliding around a little bit. And now this will go back into the freezer for at least 2 hours. My ice cream sandwich has been in the freezer for about 2 hours. The ice cream is still pretty soft. And because my cake cracked a little bit, these will not be the prettiest ice cream sandwiches, but we can just cut off a little piece here. And if you were to let this firm up a lot more than I am, it would be a little more solid. The nice thing is once this really firms up, you can cut it into small pieces and make it look more presentable. But very melty right now. In fact, wipe off my knife here. I'm just going to cut a teeny tiny piece and squish out all of my ice cream and get this right back into the freezer. All of my ice cream squished out and is just melted on my plate. But my little ice cream sandwiches that I made out of my Toffee bit cookies, let's check these out. And still soft in the middle. These ones are holding together so much better than the chocolate one. I would definitely say, and I think part of why is because I didn't stir and melt this ice cream so much. And of course it's smaller than one big piece of melty ice cream. This is the perfect cookie for an ice cream sandwich. And because my ice cream sandwich didn't hold up at all, it's all right. It's not a sandwich. Let's see how our ice cream bars do today. I decided to stick it in the freezer all night long instead of just a couple of hours and see what would happen. Let's see if it holds up any better today. And it definitely is doing a better job today. And hopefully all of the ice cream didn't squish out of this one. And hopefully I can get it off of the parchment paper. Oh, there we go. Very messy, very thin and flat ice cream sandwich. So, I always take things like this as a learning experience. I'm going to stick this right back in the freezer so it doesn't do what it did yesterday and get even more melty. And while we're at it, let's try another one of my cookie ice cream sandwiches. These two have been in the freezer all night long. With homemade ice cream, I think the best bet is to scoop a scoop and stick it between two cookies and then stick it back in the freezer instead of kind of melting the ice cream to make it spreadable. I think with homemade ice cream, that doesn't really work very well. Although, I do have a suggestion, but let's give it a bite before it gets melty. That tastes just like an ice cream sandwich. I mean, it is an ice cream sandwich, but that cake is just like a cake on a real ice cream sandwich. Even though it doesn't look very pretty, the flavor is really good. In the future, when I make these again, I would actually make the cake part and find a cake pan that actually would fit inside of, or maybe even a loaf pan or something like that, and put the cake part in, pour in the ice cream that was freshly churned, and then put the top on, and then stick that entire pan in the freezer. Something that has tall enough sides that it would help it hold its shape. And then the freshly churned ice cream would actually harden up the way it's supposed to, like this one. And this one is already delicious, but I'll try it again. It's really had time for the ice cream and the cookie to squish together. Much better today than yesterday. Man, those are good. And these ones are good too. They just look terrible. So not ideal for a picnic at all, unless you are hosting at your very own house, and then you can take it directly out of the freezer and then eat it as fast as possible with all of your guests. So if you don't want to make your ice cream sandwiches into bars, if you feel like that's too much of a hassle, maybe your freezer isn't big enough for a pan, or you don't have a cake pan or something like that, this batter, instead of spreading it in a cookie sheet like I did, you could use a cookie scoop and scoop it out and bake it into little circles. And then do exactly what I did with these cookies, is take a scoop of ice cream, squish it in there, and then wrap it in plastic wrap. But even though it was kind of a failure in presentation wise, it is not a failure in flavor. So good. The texture is spot on for a gluten-free ice cream bar sandwich. And you can't go wrong with your and you can't go wrong with your favorite cookie and your favorite ice cream put together. But what a fun little summer treat, or winter treat, or whenever treat. Let me know if you try either of these recipes, and let me know how it goes with you. And I'll tell you right now, even in just the few minutes that I've been talking, this one is starting to get really soft, but my cookie here is holding together and staying fairly frozen. So for me, this is what being in the kitchen is all about. You make a mess, it tastes delicious, doesn't always look so great, and you feed people and you all enjoy it together. So it really doesn't matter if it looks like this, because I will enjoy it and other people will enjoy it. And if they decide to pass it up because it doesn't look very good, encourage them to take a bite and they might be pleasantly surprised. If you're going somewhere for the 4th of July, don't make this dessert and take it with you. That is my advice on gluten-free ice cream sandwiches. Or make them anyways and just save them all for yourself. That's an idea too. But thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Look for the next video coming up by Our Heritage Works in our 4th of July collaboration series. And I'll see you on the next one.